Here we go. Okay, everybody who is watching this on replay, welcome back to Talk Like That, my podcast that I do every week from this comfortable, squishy cupboard of mine here in the west of Toronto. Today, I am especially attired, not tired, but attired to introduce my next guest, who is, well, she's been on lots of different things, but most recently, she has appeared in Netflix's show Bridgerton, which some of you may have heard of, and some of you may even have seen. And it's a very popular show, and hence why I'm wearing this top hat. Rhiannon Moushall, she will correct me on the pronunciation when she comes on, is a writer, singer, actor, and voice actor. And I'd like to welcome, with great delight, Rhiannon Moushall. Welcome to Talk Like That.
Hi, thanks for having me. I much appreciate it, Lord Mark.
Well, you know, got to keep up appearances.
Oh, don't we all?
So, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. And you did a very valiant effort with my name. Very well done. It's very close. Rhiannon Moushall.
Moushall. Okay. I should have done my homework and found out beforehand really how it's supposed to be pronounced. But there you go. You know, we're all learning, right? The reason I pronounced it like that is because there's a village in Cornwall that is called Moushall, but it's spelled slightly differently. Yeah, it's spelled like Mouse Hall, but of course, if you say that, the Cornish will correct you and say, "No, Moushall, it's pronounced Moushall," and it's where the last speaker of the Cornish language died as an old lady, Dolly Pentreath. And because I'm such a language geek, I went down there all the way to Cornwall to see her grave. So there you go.
That is commitment to language. I'm impressed.
See, that's it. So where does Moushall come from?
It's a great question. No idea.
I'll bet you it's Cornwall. I'll put $10 on that it's from Cornwall.
You probably know better than I. To be honest, we have a theory that it might be because my parents, on my dad's side, so it's his name, he grew up in Australia, that when people that came over to Australia, their last names got bastardized. So we think it may have been possibly French. Originally, Moushall is Mouchoux, and someone might have misheard it, and it was Moushall for a long time, or maybe. But I'm going to be honest, we're really making stuff up.
All right, so I could lose $10 on that. All right, well, that's great. Well, I'm delighted to have you on here. Thank you so much for coming on. And so I've got a lot of questions for you because, I mean, really your background, first of all, like where you were born, where you grew up, where you live, where you are now, all of the, like, you are truly a woman of the world.
A little. I don't know if I'm truly. I've been very fortunate. I've been really lucky, and I've had a lot of international experiences.
So, I mean, you were born in Thailand, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. My parents were there for my father's work. I don't really remember it. I was very, very, very small before we then moved to the States.
That's probably because you were born at a very young age. But so you moved from Thailand, you moved to Alabama, right? And grew up there?
That's correct. Yeah, I grew up there until I was 6 years old, around then. But that means a lot of my language formative years were spent in Alabama in kindergarten there, which gave me, because then we would then move to Australia, back to where my parents were from. They're Australian. But I have never lost my Alabama twang. So I have a slightly muddled accent as a result.
Right, I know what that's like. So I guess when you went back to Australia, well, you weren't going back to Australia because you went from Thailand to Alabama, then to Australia. So then all the kids would be like, "Why are you talking like that? That's like really weird."
Yeah, nicely done.
Thank you.
I
Impressive.
remember feeling it quite harshly when I started grade one, and I went to school and we recited the ABCs, and I felt very confident that I knew what I was doing. So I was like, I've done this, I'm fine. And we got to the last letter, and everyone went Y and Z, and I very loudly went Z, and people just were like these other 6-year-olds were, what do you think you're doing? And I immediately went, oh no, because that
There's
age is
yeah,
so you're desperate to fit in, and I thought, oh no,
horrific. Yeah, that would be horrifying. I imagine when you're like 5 or whatever, and
yeah,
everyone's like looking at you and is like, "Why are you so different?" Yeah, and that would be
exactly.
kind of scary. So I guess you would have to adapt pretty quickly to the local accent.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I did it quickly. I mean, what does a 6-year-old do quickly? Uh, but by the time I was sort of 10, 11, 12, I think most of it was gone, and it just swings in on usually A vowels. So like ah, and gets quite nasal and forward, whereas Australian can be quite back.
Right. Yeah, and it's Brisbane is where you are now, right? This current moment,
Correct.
you're actually in
Yes.
Brisbane on a sunny, hot day on a
Yes.
Friday morning.
Yes, I am. I'm visiting my family, my mum and my sisters and my brother. Well, they all live here, and I live in the UK, but I'm visiting.
Okay, so your actual base is Swindon in the United Kingdom, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Why on earth, out of all the places in the United Kingdom, did you choose to live in Swindon?
I knew that was coming because I could afford a house there.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it was me
Okay,
and my partner buying our first home, and we wanted somewhere that was between London for my work, and he works in Westbury.
okay,
Not that that matters during COVID. He hasn't been to work in a year.
right.
He's been working from home, but we were able to, with our joint incomes, afford a house.
All right.
It's not the long term plan, but I must say, I think Swindon gets a rough rap. It's not that bad.
It always does. It always does. Apparently, it has the scariest roundabout. Um,
The
it,
Magic Roundabout.
yeah, that's
Yes.
what they call it, the Magic Roundabout. Exactly. So,
To be honest, I'm a very nervous driver, unfortunately, but I quite like it because everybody goes so much slower because you have to think. I think it's 9 roundabouts all connected. So you just need to know where you want to go and just take one roundabout at a time. Much like life, you know you want to get over there, but just take it one roundabout at a time. Don't try and power through. You got to go, okay, I'm going here. I'm going here. And if you do that, you're fine.
cool. So I don't want to talk too much more about Swindon. Maybe that can be another podcast, but we want to know more about you. So, how did you first, like, you are a performer of many different facets, and I just want to know, I ask this question of everyone, it's a typical standard, but how did you get into performing? What was it that caused you to think, I want to be an actor?
I think a big part of it was from the age of 3, my mother put me in dance classes. I am a terrible dancer. I love it. To this day, I still dance and I really love it. And I've done a bit professionally, but it's not my strength. And I love it's one of those things where you sort of find paths through. And I realized what I loved about dancing was the performance, like embodying a song or a character. And then when we came to Australia, I started having singing lessons. Um, so, and I loved that. And then when I was 8, my mother took me to see Singing in the Rain. And have this very vivid memory of sitting near the front and the actor playing Don, I think Gene Kelly's role. He's dancing and singing in the rain, and he kicked water dead on in my face, like looked me in the eye and went splash. And that was it. I was like, cool, that's what I'm going to do.
So he looked you in the eye and he thought, I'm gonna kick water in your fucking face. And he
Spot on.
splashed you and you thought, oh my God, it's destiny. Whereas he was just thinking, I'm gonna kick water in her face. But
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to kick that kid. But it meant everything to me. It was a weird, so vividly remember thinking, like, it was such a thrill, and I was like, I want to be that person so badly. So from
Wow.
then on, I was
And
pretty
so
much
that
sold.
at that moment you caught the bug, and that was it. That was you set for the
Yeah.
rest of time. Oh, that's really
Hmm.
cool. Um, so anyway, one thing I wanted to ask, which has got not very much to do with your career, which is that you recently, like you said, you moved from Swindon down to Brisbane for a while.
Hmm.
And so, of course, some people might be thinking, how the hell did she do that? I'm stuck in my little apartment or whatever. I'm stuck in this little house with uh, six other people, five other people. I've lost count now, but it's, and you have traveled halfway around the world. So I guess what they did was they stuck you in a little box for 2 weeks, right?
That is correct. To be honest, it has been very hard getting here. It took me 6 months to get a flight.
Wow.
Um, yeah, my mum unfortunately got very ill. She's okay now, but she was diagnosed with bowel cancer in July, which was just about the worst thing that can happen during a pandemic. Because any other time in my life, I could have dropped everything and been on the next plane.
Yeah.
Um, like I would have been fortunate enough to be in the position where I could do that, and I couldn't. I booked a flight and it got cancelled. I booked another flight, it got cancelled. And because the flight caps to Australia are still very low, they've been halved again. So only 15 people per flight.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so eventually they found me a flight on a repatriation flight. So I flew into Darwin, and they have a facility dedicated there called Howard Springs. It used to be accommodation for builders when they were building a massive mining plant out there. So it's all these little bungalows. So it's a little
Mhm.
room. You got your bed, you got a mini fridge, you got a desk, and a little veranda that you're allowed to sit on, which is amazing because a lot of people have to do hotel quarantine where you can't even crack a window.
Oh,
I didn't do that. Thank God.
oh, that's good.
So
And it's summer.
exactly, yes, and they have aircon, which was another big important point because
Oh,
Darwin is
very important.
very
Yeah.
hot, very very hot. Um,
Did you
so
have Wi-Fi?
yes, and for some reason, my room had the best Wi-Fi. They couldn't. So you also wear while I was there, I wore an armband, like a medical device that tracked my temperature and oxygen and heart rate the whole time I was there. In addition to having multiple COVID tests, um, and they would call me every day. This service called telehealth, and they would ask, "How are you doing? Do you have?" I'd take my temperature. We'd record it all, and they would track everything. So it was very, very intense. But I felt incredibly safe and and very lucky, to be honest, just to make
Mm.
it.
And so, do you know how long you're going to be there before you go back?
Well, in theory, I have to be back in March. In theory, the whole world is in theory at the moment.
Mm.
I have a job that I need to be back for. Um, so I'm staying till at least then. But if the job gets moved or cancelled, the great thing about voice acting is I can do it from here. I've got my booth
Yeah.
set up. So then I'll stay with my family as long as I can because it had been a while, and obviously mum recovering. So
Yeah.
yeah, but the hope is to at least until March.
Okay, that's good. You know what's great about that is that you're not even going to experience winter 2020 into 2021. You won't even see winter.
Yeah.
Like you moved out. Well, I guess it was kind of winter when you traveled, but
But it was the cold snap particularly hit. I flew out on the 30th of December,
right.
or the 29th of December there, and landed 30th here. And yes, and almost immediately after I left, it snowed in Swindon. It was like, oh gosh, dodge that bullet.
Yeah. So I want to get back to your work now, and
Hmm.
so you why first of all, why do you think Bridgerton is so successful? And secondly, how did you get to be in it?
Sure. I think it's so successful, and this is a big kudos to. I mean, Shonda Rhimes is amazing, but the choice to cast diversely was important. It would have been just another period piece. It's obviously
Yeah.
based on a very successful series of books, which helps.
Mhm.
It's always good to have a strong base material. But what made that show, and we all said it all the time, we were like, look at this cast because it doesn't matter when and then they took it further with the costuming. Like they kept a lot of the silhouettes, but then played with fabric, played with
Yeah.
color, which made it interesting. We weren't watching another Austen, and I do love my Austen period pieces, those kinds of things. But after a while, we all want something new, and we want to see fresh faces, and we want to see different skin tones, different body types, different ethnicities, and I think that's what truly caught people. And obviously, it's raunchy as heck, and people love that.
Yeah, things happen in it that you wouldn't expect to see so much in a Jane Austen.
exactly, and
But
that really, so I think that drew people.
yeah, yeah, I totally understand. I can see what you're saying. Yeah, it's the colors in terms of the colors in terms of the fabrics and everything. I mean, obviously they've been like they've got it really close to the tailoring and everything. It
Mm-hmm.
looks authentic, but obviously when you see the way like when they're walking, how it sort of moves, and it's like, okay, that's a different fabric. Like that's not like a heavy embroidered kind of material that
Mm-hmm.
they would normally wear when they're trying to be true to the time. So I see what you mean. They've kept the silhouette, but colors in terms of fabrics and colors in terms of people too. Because when you're watching it, it's like, oh, here is Lord such and such. Here is Viscount blah blah, and they are people of color, and it's like, wow, this is another world. What's going on? Is
it
really interesting
it
the way they've done
opens, yeah, I think it opens up the door to colorblind casting and makes and proves a point that you can do it and smash records, and that is so important.
that. Mhm.
I'm really glad it's done well, if only for that reason, is that going forward, casting directors will be more open-minded. They won't turn around and say, well, it's set in the 1800s, everyone needs to be white.
Right.
Maybe we'll throw in a token person of color. No, we don't need to
Yes.
do that anymore. We're tired. Let's do something else.
Yeah, that's right. And finally, hopefully, black people won't be cast just as uh, a thug in a gang, a slave. All the stereotypical roles that will often come up in
Mm-hmm.
those high profile type movies. Hopefully, like you say, that will open the door to new things, right? So that,
Yeah,
like you said, colorblind casting. Um,
yeah.
okay, great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little snippet of you where you show up, right? So,
Yes.
oh, by the way, how did you end up being cast as
Oh,
an extra in it?
sure thing. It was they held cattle call auditions in Bath and London. And originally they were very much looking for supporting artists who could dance, and I had dance training. So I turned up. In the end they cast professional dancers. Like they went and found specific ballroom dancers for all of the dance work. But on the day, it was very much a case of, I mean, this is how it goes, particularly in film and TV, and I think important people understand. I had the right look. I don't think they particularly cared about my ability.
Right, right. And
So
that's cool. So, because you sing and you dance, but I don't think you don't sing or dance in this one, do you?
no, I don't. I got me in the room being able to dance, but what got me cast was my appearance.
Okay. Did they say what it was about your appearance that fitted this
Um,
the description?
they were particularly happy with my hair. I remember they took my hair out, and the hair and costume were running because I have quite long hair as well. And they went, They were like, this is great, because they obviously do a lot of work with the hair. So they were looking for long hair that was stylable, suitable to the period. So I don't think you couldn't have gotten that job if you had like a bob um, or short hair,
Right.
because they're not going to wig everyone. So
Yes.
pays to
Okay.
grow
Well,
your
I'm
hair.
going to play this. I'll play this little piece now and see if
Hmm.
people can spot you. Because what I love about this extract here is that the camera almost knocks you over, and then there you are, and then it kind of swooshes past you, and then you turn up. There you are again on the left, right? So
Yeah.
so look at that. You couldn't get a better. Hang on. You couldn't get a better close up than this. Really, it's right there. It's so obviously you, right? And I just wanted to ask you, you were obviously there with another person and
Mm-hmm.
chatting or appear to be chatting. Were you actually chatting or were you pretending to have a conversation?
I believe specifically in this scene, I wasn't, because of how close I was to the boom mic. As a rule, unless they told me to speak out loud, like they would often indicate, they'd say mime or please talk. I'm
Right.
pretty sure this was a mime situation. Um, so I would actually be saying things because otherwise I feel like I look like a fish just going.
Okay. All right. Well, what I've actually done here is I've enhanced the audio on this so that we can actually hear what you were saying. So let me just play this back and see if you can make it out.
Have you seen that Duke of Hastings fella? He's a real dish. Oh, look, he's coming this way. Is he looking at me? Is he looking now?
Did you catch any of that? I'm trying to work out what
You
you were
know, you've
saying.
proved me wrong. I was obviously talking. Oh, I got so confused. And it sounds dead on like me.
Totally. It picked that accent up pretty well, but I think it
Okay.
distorted the voice. It's a little bit higher than it would normally be in real life. Okay, so that must have been quite fun. How long did it take to dress you up in all that Regency finery?
The costume wasn't too bad. The corseting and the costume were usually on in 20 minutes or so. Amazing costume department would take care of that for us. It's the hair that would take an hour and a half to 2 hours
Right.
in the morning. So it would often be very, very early calls, so 3 or 4 a.m. calls.
Oh, 3 or
Yeah.
4 a.m. and you have to
Yeah.
turn up, and there would be, I'm guessing they would apply makeup as well, right? And
Well, to be honest, yes and no. Some days they did. I think they really wanted to put quite. It's interesting. They were very big on going modern with the costume and playing with the hair. Still had to be period appropriate, but
right.
makeup wise, I was often not wearing any. And if I was wearing, I usually wasn't wearing base. It was just a bit of rouge to bring some color and maybe darken my eyebrows a little. But they were very there were times where they did absolutely no makeup and just threw us on.
Wow. If I was turning up at 3 or 4 in the morning, I would want a ton of makeup. Like if I was getting up for a job at that time in the morning, I'd want makeup. Like that's it. It'd be terrible. Oh
I
man.
mean, there were times where I felt a bit like I would go to the bathroom and be like, "Oh, those bags," and I would just stand there with cold water, like, "Come on."
I'll bet. And I guess it would take I mean, for me, I'm not a morning person, but 3 or 4 3 or 4 that would take me a while to adjust to being able to do anything. So that must have been pretty tough. How long? Oh, I've already asked you how long it took. But getting there at 3, that's insane. That's crazy. I hope they paid you like early turn up money for that. That
You
yeah,
do get
good.
early call. You do get an early call fee. It's fine.
That's good. That's all right then. So were you um like you've listed that you've got lots of accents at your disposal, right? I mean, obviously
Mhm.
in that show you didn't need any of them because you were just goldfishing, but you've listed you told me that you have RP, received pronunciation. You have a West Country accent. You got a Cockney accent. You got a
Mm.
French accent and General American, a Texan, and a Russian. So that's lots of accents. I mean, most actors that I know don't list anywhere near as many accents as that on their resume. And I'm just wondering, is this something that accents, are they easy for you to pick up, or do you have to study them carefully?
I think there are some accents that I found come very naturally. For example, the West Country I have purely because my husband is West Country.
Oh,
So
right.
over time, I listen to him every day. Like we talk, and over time, I would just play with it. So the ones I list are ones I am confident of. I have others that I think I can do, and I can do in a pinch. Or if, like, for example, if I go into an audition and I do a lot of comedy work and a lot of character work, so they will often turn around and be like, "Oh, could you whip out a German?" And I'll be like, "Okay, like I'll try."
I'm gonna go. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually, to be honest, the work I do is heightened. So as a result, I'm less worried about nuance. I'm less worried about subtlety, because I do think if you want a French accent, you will probably, like a genuine French accent, you will find a French actor. There are more than enough.
Right.
So
You'd be surprised though. Like the number of actors that I know that have been they've been asked to do a Russian accent. Like, for example, there's one guy who he was on a show, he was in a movie, and it was there were like 5 characters in it that were Russian characters. And I think there was one Russian dude among them. The rest of them were like Swedish, and he's like American Canadian. So
yeah,
it's like, even though you would say, even though we know that there are plenty of people like French, there's going to be loads of people with French accents around. There's going to be actors that have those, but when it comes to the actual crunch, and casting directors are calling people in, and they're like, I don't know, they don't show up, even in a big city, then they're like, okay, we need someone who can try this accent.
Yeah, I agree. I think basically, and I should say, for me, practice wise, and this is sort of my method, is I play a lot of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and I use that to practice my accents. So I will specifically make characters that have those accents. So sitting in front of my friends, I can make loads of mistakes and we laugh about it. So I'll go, okay, this character I'm about to put on is going to be Russian, and then I'll do the Russian, and I'll and you're improvising in the accent as well. And I'll hit a particular vowel and I'll go, oh, that was wrong. And everyone will laugh. And I'll go, okay, well, for future reference, that vowel does not do that. Like, that sounds wrong.
Yeah.
On top of, like, lots of YouTube is my best friend. YouTube for accent work, I think. Like, watching both people instructing and also just clips from films. Those wonderful videos where people say a list of words in their accent.
Right.
Very, very helpful.
I've never, you know what? I'm really surprised that I never really thought about D&D as a practice forum, because I've got two of my kids they're doing D&D online all the time, and they put on the accents and stuff, and they both do like the dungeon mastering and all that too, but I never really, I know the accents are used for characters in D&D, but that's a great idea to get into D&D in order to play around with the accent, because there has to be that run up between sort of like, first of all, it's a new thing, and the run up stages where you're kind of like playing it around with it. You got to free form it, because just learning the words from the script, just those words, and trying to learn it by rote is not going to get you into the character. But if you're doing it and you're in a safe environment where it's just your friends that you don't mind being laughed at, and it's not going to be a director that's like, what the hell is that? Right? So that's a really good point that you bring up.
Yeah, I highly recommend role-playing games. I think they're, for actors in general, like, because then you can also, nowadays I try to give myself characters I haven't played before, like, because I'll often dungeon master, which is great because you can switch between lots of NPCs or non-playable characters. You have a chance to go, I never play like the mother. I never play those matronly characters. I'm going to try one out. I'm going to put it on and see what that feels like. And it's always really uncomfortable. And like I said, we all laugh at each other, but it's so safe, which then means you can easily laugh at yourself also when you make a mistake in the rehearsal room or in an audition even, because no one's, and then I think that also makes directors look at you differently, because they go, oh, she made a mistake and she laughed at herself and then carried on. That's so refreshing. Great. When she's in the room and I give her a direction, she's not going to freak out. I highly recommend it.
Cool. Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So tell me, what is your favorite kind of work?
Oh, this is so interesting because before COVID hit, when theatres were open, I would have said musical theatre is where my heart was at, going back to that singing in the rain moment. Um, and that was what I did primarily, and I loved it. And then COVID hit, theatres closed, lost all my jobs, and I set up a booth and started voice acting. And I've always loved computer games, and I've always been a gamer since I was a little kid. So I started training myself. I bought the equipment, learned how to use it, and then started auditioning and started getting work. And now I'm working, I'd say semi-regularly. I'm picking up steam as a voice actor, and I think I almost love that more. Almost, yeah.
Well,
It's
I
interesting.
guess the thing about voice acting compared to stage acting is that you're basically in stage acting, and this is part of the fun, part of the draw of it is that fear, right? Like you've got all the eyes on you at that point, right? And the pressure is on you to get it right this night. And if maybe you notice there's a little fuck up on this night, and then the next night it's like, okay, I'm going to do that again. And so you're improving in that way. Whereas with the voice work, it's like, okay, you hear it back, you play it back, and then it's like, okay, that wasn't right. So then you can just go back and edit that out. So
I think though there is a danger in that I had very early on, in that you can over edit or overdo. I've come through my practice to discover that within the first sort of for most things, in the first 3 takes, if it isn't there, I need to go do some work on the script rather than keep trying to do it in the booth. Otherwise, I lose other parts of the performance because I'm obsessing over, say, this word or this idea. Although, and then sometimes it almost is like theatre. I got a job this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to get up. I got the job at 5 a.m., had the job at 6 a.m., and it was a live record, like it was a live directed from the States.
Right.
And it's almost like theatre. Like I got as nervous as I do doing a show. Whereas you're right, one of the wonderful things I love about self-directed sessions is I can take my time, wander into the booth. I can swear if I want. Like if I, fuck up a take, I can yell that. And I don't feel, whereas if I do that in front of a director, I don't know necessarily. If I know someone, like people who know me and have worked with me a lot, it's fine. It's not a problem. But you never want to, in front of a new client, drop all of your expletives in one go. So it's interesting because I still think I can get that thrill of like the theatre, everything's relying on this in those moments. But I definitely do prefer it's just me. But yes, I'd say 3 takes, and if I'm not getting it, get out of the booth, go read your script, sit down, do some character work because something's missing.
Right. Yeah, and then I guess you just need to go out and get some inspiration from somewhere, or just take a break. Like even taking a break, giving your voice a rest, and so on, and then come at it again from a different angle, right? Yeah. But I mean, I guess what I was saying really is that, sure, that there's that safety net where it's not live, except for that one that you went to like 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Then it's like you're on, like the red light is on. They're watching you. The pressure is on for you to get it right.
Yeah.
And that I think is what most actors really crave, is that sort of that danger moment, that adrenaline rush where it's like, okay, you get that. This is the moment. It's countdown. They call it and say, and action, rolling, action, and then you're on. And then I can't remember who said this, but who's the dude that was in Looper? He plays alongside Bruce Willis in Looper. He's got one of those like double-barreled names, American. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Like,
it's gonna bug me.
It's like George something, but anyway, the guy, right? He's all over the place.
Yes, yeah.
And he was saying that it's all about attention. And like he did this TED talk on attention, getting attention, craving attention. But he was talking about how there's that moment where after they've, called action and everything's running, he said everything disappears. and it's just him and the character's thoughts. He becomes the character, and it's just him. And he said he lives for that moment, that point where he's just like everything disappears and melts away. So I don't know. I just thought it was a very poetic way to explain it. And I'll put the link here in the comments. I'll find the TED Talk I'm talking about, and anyone can watch it. Anyone who's watching this, who happens to stumble upon this interview, can watch the TED Talk when they get bored of this one.
Yeah, exactly. Tune out.
Yeah, and so the other thing is, like, what advice would you give to any other voice actors that are starting out in the business?
Well, I'm as relatively fresh as myself. I'd say I started working regularly other than a few one-off jobs years ago, I've started working regularly about 6 months, 8 months ago. Gosh, time is moving. And things I have learned that I think are really valuable are know your kit, spend the time and the money, as hard as that can be. It will pay for itself if you work on your craft, but do your research. Know how to make mistakes, like peak, blow out the mic. And don't get comfortable. Don't be like, oh, that's an okay amount of like background noise. My floor's okay. It's a little high. No, figure out how to fix it. Because when you get to that point where your stuff is really clean, then you can enter the market at a good standard. You don't want to be building up while you're working. And because I was really itching to work when I first got my kit in April, and I was like, I want to audition, and I was like, you don't know what you're doing yet. And you don't want to give people the wrong impression. So know what you're doing up front, and then connect, I think, is a big thing. Hit your socials hard, hit them regularly. I have almost all my work has come from Twitter lately, which is insane to me.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I did not, somebody was like, you should try Twitter. And I was like, okay. And then audition, practice, and keep a nice log. I keep an Excel spreadsheet of every audition I've done and whether I got it or not. So I can see when I'm lulling, what kind of jobs I'm getting, and make sure I am auditioning enough, because it is a numbers game at the end of the day.
Okay. And how do you reach out and get your auditions? Like, do you have an agent that gives those to you, or do you go out yourself and find them?
Well, I have a theater and film agent, because to be honest, that's really the only way to get a lot of theater and film work. But voice acting, I do not have an agent. It's another one of those things where I said I'm going to wait until I've got some stuff under my belt before I start approaching agencies. And in this case, I said, once I'm back from Australia, then I'll reach out. So I literally not Google, on Twitter, I search casting call, and the hashtag, and loads comes up, and I scroll through and I go, I'm good for that. I'm good for that. I'm good for that. And then I start following, because there are accounts that are literally called like VA casting retweet. And they will retweet. So I follow them, and they reliably retweet calls. And then I'll open them up. Some are paid really well, some are unpaid. And then from there, it's a discretion thing. I'm also on all of the pay-to-play sites, whether I'm paying a subscription or not. For example, I don't have a subscription for Voice 123, but I get work there because people hear my reels there, and then they come looking for me. They will find my email at my website and go, hey, I saw your reels on Voice 123, which I know is a little bit sneaky, but it's a free, it's my free account. And if they're willing to put in the yards to find me, then that's on the client, not me. I just put myself out there. So I think
that's great.
Make sure, make your reels good, and then spread yourself out.
Yeah. And I've seen some of your voice work, and I got to say, it's awesome. Like, there's a lot of it is really funny, but you really put yourself right into it. So that's quite inspiring. That's why people are getting in contact with you, because it's like they love what they see what you do. You put your all into it, like you get into the character, and you can see like the ones that you've recorded, doing the voice, you can see you're getting into it, right? And that's how to do it, right?
Yeah,
get into the character.
I think sometimes you can do yourself a mischief when you knock your mic stand or you like flail and like you're like, oh no. So I do have to sometimes remember that I'm in a tiny space and that no one. I think it comes from coming from theater. I'm so used to being verbose.
You've got
and
exactly. You have
gestures.
your. That's the thing. Like in the theater, you have like you can put your arms either side and go, "This is my space." And then when it comes to like TV and film, it's like, okay, this is my space.
Yes,
And then when it
like,
comes to voice, it's like, this is my space, but this isn't. Like I try not
yes.
to knock it with your hand or with your head or whatever.
Spot
Don't
on.
don't
That
spill
is
your coffee over your keyboard and the
no
mixer.
coffee in the booth.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm breaking a rule. This is water.
It's fair, but it's
just,
effective. It's all for the theater of it, so it's totally fine.
exactly. And even this, I've got my pipe as well, which I never
I mean, you
liked.
wouldn't smoke in the booth, like.
Actually, I
Just be
wouldn't smoke
asking
it
for trouble.
anywhere. Like my wife would be like, "Mark, why are you smoking?" Well, no, you like she made me promise not to put tobacco in it and smoke it, because I was seriously thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind giving it a
Could you
go,
try?
but
No.
she wouldn't let me do that. Anyway, moving on, I have one more question for you, which is, what kind of work would you like to? I mean, is there anything that you'd like to do in the future? Is there like a role or a certain kind of work?
I mean, I've been trying to crack that West End door for quite a few years now. I just got a couple of recalls and auditions for the West End at the beginning of 2020, and then everything shut down. So I felt like I finally, and once again, that took years and years of not just auditioning, but workshops with casting directors to like
Right.
keep showing my face and be like, I'm here. So I think the dream is a West End musical role, preferably something comedic, with like a nice big silly sing in it.
I know exactly. My Fair Lady. That would be perfect for you.
Yeah, I would. Yes, I would love that. I'd adore that. So,
I could really see you as Eliza Doolittle. It would be absolutely perfect because you'd be able to do the accent, and you'd be able to it'd be like a metamorphosis. The subtle changes from being flower girl out on the street, and then and over time refine it to become more of a heightened RP. I could see you doing it. I would cast you in that.
Thank you.
For sure.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, get yourself a West End production role, and then
Again, I don't know if I could live long enough to make it up to that level, but thank you for
can any of us
idea.
really? If we don't start there.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming on and talking to me, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to get some really interesting and important advice for people that are thinking, because I know that right now there's a lot of actors that have done TV, film, and stage stuff that are thinking like there's not much happening right now, and I know a lot of them are thinking about creating but like this was literally a cupboard full of junk, right? And when this
look now.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's like it's become my padded cell. And in a few minutes, my wife will come and unlock the door and let me out. But so what I'm saying, it was a cupboard. It was full of junk, and now it's full of different junk. It's got my computer and my mixing desk and the microphone. But so I just think that there's a lot of actors that are thinking, oh, maybe I could transition and do get some work in voice, and yeah, it's possible.
It's more than possible. It is totally possible. You just got to take it seriously like you would any other job. Go treat it real serious and work your butt off.
Yeah, work your butt off. That's it. Okay, so Rhiannon Moushall, thank you for appearing on Talk Like That.
Thank you so much for having me.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.